What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining me on another FCP Euro DIY. Today, we're going to be working on a 2015 BMW M4. Today on the M4 behind me, we are going to be covering how to replace and or service the seals on your VANOS solenoids. These VANOS solenoids are responsible for controlling the varocam timing on your S55 as well as most modern BMW engines. And over time, these can fail on higher mileage vehicles, causing a whole slew of codes. You can see those on the product page over at fcpo.com. If you're experiencing some trouble codes, take a quick look on there and see if that could be one of them. These solenoids have very fine, tiny little metal screen. They're basically little mesh filters. So the best way to keep these going for the long run is staying on top of your oil changes. Every 5,000 miles at most, these should last you a pretty long time. As you can imagine, bad dirty oil is going to gunk up these little screens super quickly, causing you a lot of headaches down the road. So we recommend staying on top of that interval, and that's going to help you avoid various problems on your engine. Maybe your solenoids are fine, but you have a little bit of a leak up front on the block. We sell an O-ring kit which will help resolve that if you want to just service those instead, also available on fcpo.com. Along with the solenoids, we also have some fresh hardware, super inexpensive, not necessary to replace it, but if you're cleaning up the front of your block and you're trying to get away from an oily mess to a nice, fresh, clean look, those will be linked in the video description below as well. Again, there's no real interval on how long these can last. They can last the lifetime of the vehicle, or they can fail as early as 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 miles. It really depends on how the vehicle is driven and cared for. So again, I've said it before, but oil changes on a constant 5,000 interval, less if you want, is going to be the best way to help these go for the long run. So the car behind us, we're just going to be using this as an example. It only has 75,000 miles. We don't know its history, and we don't know what its service life has been like. And before we get started on that, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. For this DIY, we're going to be using a small 1/4-inch ratchet. We have an extended T25, some pliers for some rivets along with a flathead screwdriver, magnet tool because I'm sure we're going to drop a bolt or two. We have a torque wrench for our strut brace hardware. As far as sockets go, it looks like we have a ton of them. Really, it's just a bunch of multiples. We have an E8, we have a 10 mil, and we have a 13 mil. We have an electric ratchet to speed some of the stuff up, some brake clean to clean up our area where the sensors are going to be going in. And other than that, we should be ready to rock and roll. So let's get started on this DIY. All right, we are under the hood of the M4, and like anything else underneath the hood of this car, to get to anything, we have to disassemble half the car. So to get started, we're going to get the cowl covers off at the top. That is going to expose the hardware for the strut brace up top. We also have some hardware down below. One thing to note, these will be linked in the video description. However, you are not going to see us replacing them, as we're going to be taking this car apart at least 15 times throughout our ownership. So while they are not torque to yield, the hardware for the strut brace is recommended to be replaced by BMW. So do that at your discretion. Again, we will link it below for you. We will get to it when we take this off for the last time. But for sake of these videos, we will just be reusing it. To get started, we have a cowl cover both on either side. We have a couple rivets and some 1/4 turn 10 mils. Let's get to it. All right, on the driver's side, we have an expanding rivet right here that holds this cowl cover in place. And we have 3 1/4 turn 10 mil hex heads. I'm just going to take a 10 mil socket and do a 1/4 turn on these. We're just lining up, or unlining up the arrows, turning counterclockwise. This little expanding rivet, I'm just going to pop it up a little bit using this flathead screwdriver, and then you can sometimes grab it the rest of the way or just use some pliers to pull it up, just like that. And then with that, we can lift up the cowl cover, pull towards us. These little ends here overlap on the center here, so just make sure you pull towards you, away from the center. And now we can set it to the side. But that just exposed some of our 13mm hardware that we're going to be removing. It's up to you if you want to pull the rivets holding on the weather seal around the strut brace. There's one located down below here, one on the strut tower. Usually for something like this, since we're not really working too much here, you can choose to just pull it out of this side and the one on the passenger side is a little bit easier to get off. So let's head over to the passenger side now. And then on this side, well, this weather stripping does have a rivet that sits up here. This one's missing the actual the portion that expands it, but you can just flop this over and this will give us some room to pull this out. So let me set this over and then we'll get this strut brace out of the way. We have three 13mm bolts up top on either side of the strut brace. We're going to zap these out first. And we have two more at the front end that we're going to do. Three more 13s on the driver's side. And then for the strut brace, there is one more bolt that holds in our expansion tank in place. That's a 10 mil right here. Then we're going to pull our strut brace out. Again, we have the passenger side and then the driver's side, we just sneak it out. And now we can just set this baby to the side. Now, not necessary for this DIY, but just gives us a little bit more light travel, more room, and frankly, I'm sick of this cover. We're just going to pull this off because I don't need to be looking at this. Now that we have that cover off, we're going to work on removing the intake tubes or the top of our airbox on the driver's side and the intake tube that it's attached to, intake pipe. We have a coolant line that runs over the top here. This one's just clipped on by these two little clips right here. It just lifts up and we can just tuck it over the cap of the valve cover. Not going to hurt anything. It's got plenty of flex. If you want to, you can undo this alligator clip over here and give yourself even a little bit more stretch on that hose. No problem. We have our clamp here at the end. We can go ahead and undo that now. That's just a flathead screwdriver or a 6mm driver should work. If for some reason it's been replaced or maybe it's aftermarket, sometimes they're 7mm as well. You'll notice that there's a little tab here, a little clip. These are just pushed in together when we get ready to pop this off. Nothing really special about them. If you have like an Venturi system or something like that, this isn't used anymore anyways. But moving towards the lid of our airbox, we have a PCV line and a sensor up here that we need to undo both. This one's pretty standard BMW stuff. You pinch both sides of it on the ridged portion to pop them off. Just be careful, you don't want to break them. Otherwise, you're going to have to replace the whole line. And for that, we're just going to pinch and pull back. So I'm going to pinch with my left hand and then pull the hose back. There we go. And if you've watched our Venturi intake on this, this is all the same stuff. We've done this before. So if I missed something or you want to see something on just the intake system, be sure to check out that DIY. For our sensor, it has a small little tab here at the back side. That's what we're going to push on to release it. There we go. Just tuck that up by the expansion tank. And then we have a total of 7 T25s to undo from the top half of our airbox. Now we should be able to pull up the top half of the airbox and intake tube. Don't forget about the little clip up here if you haven't already pushed the two together, just so that you can free up the pipe altogether. So I'm gonna push these two in. All right, beautiful. Free that baby up. Set this to the side. This is also a great time to inspect your engine air filter. This one is pretty dirty, but we already have the Venturi DIY, and don't worry, this car's gonna get one too. Now we have that pipe out of the way, we have a better view at where our VANOS solenoids are located. We have both the intake and exhaust right on top of each other, so that gives us pretty good access. Unfortunately, this pipe's going to be in the way, but we have a little bit of give just to push it out of the way and show you where that is as we work through it. It shouldn't really be in our way. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into those next. All right, we have our two VANOS solenoids here. The first thing we're going to do is just undo the electrical connectors. Pretty straightforward. You press on the metal release tab and then pull back. So we're going to go ahead and do the top one first. Just wiggle that connector off. And then we can just tuck this baby to the side. And we can do the same with the bottom one. Now you'll notice the bottom one has a little like protection harness around it. We should be able to just pull that off of it. All right, right, so we're gonna work this little protecting cover off. You can see it's a little bit stressed already. Someone's been in here before taking this off in the past, but it should just pop off. Hopefully we don't lose it all the way. So, to be honest, my good people, this one's a bit tedious. This little protection beauty cover over this plug, it's not really in the way, but it doesn't make it any easier to get this little connector out. But nonetheless, once we get it out, we can just tuck it out of the way. You can see how much dirt this is trapping. So try not to get any of that down your intake tube. Now we have a better view of the two solenoids. We have two 10mm bolts holding them in and a little metal bracket. So let's start working both of those out. Okay, I'm gonna reach in there with my hands and pull the 10mm bolt out. If you're afraid of dropping stuff in the intake tube here, put a rubber glove over it, throw some towels in there, anything to catch debris or hardware from falling in there. So just to show you what that can look like, we'll take some shop towel here and just put it in a way where if anything does fall in, it'll be caught in the paper. And then we can pull the paper out as one, or throw a magnet in there if we need to first, and we should be good. These hard cooling lines get in the way of that lowered 10mm bolt a little bit. So I'm gonna go in with a shorter 10. Just break that free. Again, ratcheting head, or swivel head ratchet goes a long way when working on these tight, hard to reach spots on these engines. Okay, now we have the two 10mm out. We have our work area clean. These cooling lines are gonna get in the way. Where the end of the screwdriver is here, we have an E-Torx that we need to remove. That's going to give these a little bit of play so that we can push them out of our way a bit, especially for this lower solenoid, and get that out. So let's get that E-Torx bolt off first, and then this should give us enough play for that lower solenoid. All right, with that E-Torx off, we have a little bit of play. I don't think it's going to be enough, so we have one more. You follow the line up, sitting right here. We're going to loosen that one up too, which will loosen up the top of this bracket, and that should give us, I think, what is going to be the last bit of play needed for that solenoid removal. Pop it off, and we can even push it down a bit out of our way. So that's going to be perfect. Now let's work those VANOS solenoids out. Just going to pry off the metal bracket. Be mindful of your cam sensor. And again, you don't want to pull on the connector if you're not replacing these, because you can risk breaking them. So just work patiently at the top of the metal bracket like so. And then once you get that started, then you can pull this baby out. So here's one. Again, not in horrible shape. Only 75,000 miles on this car. It looks like for the most part, they stayed pretty on top of their oil changes. So that's always good. These screens look fairly clean. Definitely not the worst we've seen. This O-ring's still supple, so it's a little hard, but it's supple enough where it wasn't leaking at all yet. So we'll go ahead and set this one to the side. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to put our new one in, and then we'll just switch over to the top one, get that one in after. So let's grab our new one and get ready to install that. Our new solenoid from Pierburg already comes pre-oiled, ready to install. You can see how nice and shiny it is. The O-rings are lubricated. They come in a nice plastic bag, so try to avoid any contact with them until you're ready to install them. So we're going to position this as best as we can, how it needs to go back into our engine block. We can always rotate it a little bit as we go in. Think of it almost as if you were installing a camshaft on the old 350 or the LS. Once we have it lined up, it's going to be a little bit of rotating back and forth just to get that O-ring to seat in, and then we can snug it up. There we go. Using a flathead on the metal bracket only, you can go ahead and give it a nice push, and it'll position it almost perfectly. Now we just need to align it a little bit better so we can get that 10mm bolt back in. Just gonna snug it up by hand, and then we're gonna snug it up using the 10mm socket on the 1/4" ratchet. Torque spec for these is no more than 10 Newton meters because it's such a tiny bolt. And for the little bit of space that we have to work with, we're just gonna use the 1/4" ratchet and our 10mm socket. Now let's repeat the same process on the top one before we plug anything back in. Same deal, here's the top one. Again, doesn't look horrible. You can see this gasket is significantly way more flat and pretty much totaled compared to the one on the bottom. So a little bit interesting. This one's actually rock hard, so any bit longer and it probably would have started leaking. Just friendly reminder, don't forget to pull off the O-ring if it stays in the block. You can see that this one still in okay shape. This one's a little bit harder than the bottom one. The sleeve was on the solenoid still, but the O-ring stayed on the block. So we'll give that a little bit of a wipe down without introducing any debris into the block. And then we'll get a new sensor and feed it in. All right, we have our new solenoid ready to rock and roll. Same thing, being very gentle as we feed it in. And we can try pushing it on by hand. Well, there we go. This one we had a little bit more room to work with, so we were able to just push it in with our fingers. We're gonna get that bolt hole lined up as best as we can and feed our 10mm in. Now we can pop our cam position sensor back in. Just be mindful when you pop these out. Sometimes these O-rings, just like the ones on the VANOS solenoids, can be bad. So in which case, because we have it apart, I'm going to replace it. O-ring will be linked in the video description below for you as well, my good people, should you need to find that one too. I put a little bit of dielectric grease on my O-ring so it has a easier chance at popping back into the block. You can use a little bit of engine oil as well. I'm just a big fan of the grease. It's not going to hurt the rubber. And I had it handy. And you pretty much go in blind. Just feed the sensor back in. I'm going to push on the sensor while just giving it a couple twists to make sure that O-ring really seats in there. As I push up, take a nice look, get nice and low, and make sure that sensor looks nice and flat. You don't really want to make the bolt pull it back in, so you can risk damaging things that way, but once you have it nice and flat, you'll be good to go. Now we're just going to play the guessing game, get this E8 hole lined back up. Let's get our VANOS solenoid plugged back in while we have this bracket still nice and free. Remember, this is the bottom one. Again, no need to pull this cover off. Don't do as I do, do as I say. Now we're going to work our plug back in. You know, the only reason I thought this cover had to come off was because this harness looked like it ran down, but it doesn't. It's part of the plug. With that one done, we can swing over the upper solenoid as well. Get this baby plugged in. And we're going to hit everything with a little bit more brake cleaner just to dilute any little bit of oil. Now we're going to reattach the two E8s for the hard line. With that back together, now we can get our air box back in, our intake pipe, and start buttoning things up. So let's go ahead and get started. Intake pipe can go back on. Feed that baby in there. Give it a little shimmy. Get these T25s lined up over on our air box. Boom, baby. We're gonna snug these up. Beautiful. While I have your attention here, we can plug in our sensor and our vacuum line once more. Beautiful. Beautiful. The little alignment bracket that lives here, it's just a little rubber grommet that fits in this rectangle. Then you twist it to lock it into place. Pretty straightforward. Push that baby through. And then we have a flathead screwdriver down here. Make sure that this pipe is in all the way. and then snug down your flathead. Don't go too hard or you will break the pipe, and then you'll have a leak. That'll be no bueno. All right, just nice and snug. This coolant line can be draped back over. If you popped it out of this little alligator clip here, don't forget to pop it back in. And now we can put my least favorite beauty cover back on. All right, now let's get our strut brace back over here. We'll show you how to torque that down and go from there. We're gonna feed the strut brace through the driver's side, weather stripping, semi-lined up. Lift this baby over. And now what I'm gonna do is just get all the hardware started by hand first. Make sure everything lines up nicely, even our expansion tank, which that one has a little bit of play in it. So I'm not too worried about it. Speaking of, we'll start with that one first. That one's just a 10 mil. Again, we're just getting it started by hand. The two front bolts for the brace are the shortest out of the bunch. You'll see the rest of them are longer. The two front are the nice short stubby ones. Again, just a reminder, BMW recommends you renew these screws. We're taking this car apart so many times that I don't want to waste the hardware every time, and they're not torque to yield, so we'll be okay, but I'm kind of curious if it does anything to them over the install and removal process that we're going to put them through. Then we have the 6 up by the strut brace, 3 on either side. Again, just getting them started by hand. You'll notice I didn't really wipe down the brace at all. That's if you want to use the same marks, the same witness marks that were there when you removed everything. If you want it to be back in the exact same position, there's going to be, you know, a tiny little bit of adjustment and everything, but the main goal is to keep it kind of where it was. Make sure you're not putting any weird stress on the expansion tank by moving it too far one way or the other. With these all started by hand, I'm just going to sink them down most of the way with the electric ratchet, and then we'll torque them down properly. So 13 mil socket. We'll start at the 3 up here on the driver's side. Strut brace. This cowl I'm going to tuck back in. We'll have to get a new expanding rivet for it, but for now it'll at least help lock it in place. Someone's done a number to this poor baby. All right, let's switch over to our torque wrench. Oh, but before we do that, this 10 mil, we're just going to snug down gently by hand. No need to go crazy with it. You have to remember it's just a little brass fitting that's still going into a little plastic tab on the expansion tank. So 10 mil socket, just a nice gentle little snug. That's all it's really looking for. Cool. Torque wrench, 28 Newton meters for all 8 of our 13 millimeter bolts. All right, let's get our cowl covers back on. So again, the inside just keys into the little tab here at the center of our windshield cowl. Just kind of guide it in, super simple. Get this baby down and put our expanding rivet in place so it holds everything. And then just a little quarter turn, I'll steal the 10 mil socket off our ratchet. There's little arrows that line up with the 10 millimeter hex head. Once you line those two up, you know you're locked up. Same thing on the driver's side. All right, my good people. And with that, that is going to conclude this DIY for today. Overall, a pretty straightforward job on the S55. Honestly, the biggest problem I have with doing anything on this car is you have to take off a million things to get to anything, and it's not a lot of room to work in. So let me know in the comment section below what you like or do not like about working on your S55. Let me know if this video was helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to drop a comment in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more like them, we're filming quite a bit and we have done quite a bit already. Please consider subscribing as we make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.